Sign 1. You stop apologizing for who you are. There was a time when you apologized for simply existing. You apologized for taking up space, for speaking too loudly, for feeling too deeply. Every part of you that didn't fit someone else's comfort became something you tried to shrink. Jung would call this living from the persona, the social mask you wear, to be accepted, even if it costs you your true self. But now you've stopped apologizing for who you are. You've started to notice how often those words, "I'm sorry," slipped from your mouth when there was nothing to be sorry for. You used to soften your opinions, mute your laughter, even hide your dreams, so no one would think you were too much. And yet, no matter how much you dimmed your light, it was never enough to feel safe in their love. Jung believed that when we betray our authentic self to belong, we don't find love, we find approval, and approval is fleeting. It keeps you on edge, always performing, always afraid the mask will slip. Healing begins the moment you realize you don't want approval anymore, you want freedom. Now, instead of apologizing for your truth, you stand in it. You say what you mean without over-explaining. You stop saying yes when every cell in your body is screaming no. You catch yourself before you shrink, and instead, you expand. Not because you're louder or harsher, but because you finally feel safe enough to be real. This is individuation, what Jung called the return to the self. The moment you integrate all the pieces you were told to hide and allow them to exist in the light. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about reclaiming the person you were before you learned to edit yourself for love. And here's the truth you've discovered. The right people are not repelled by your wholeness. They are drawn to it. Because when you stop apologizing for who you are, you stop attracting those who only loved the version of you that kept them comfortable. You begin to attract those who see you fully and stay. You no longer apologize for taking up space because you've remembered something vital. You were never here to be small. You were here to be whole, and that wholeness, it was never too much. It was exactly who you were always meant to be. Sign 2. You remember what you used to love before you changed for them. There was a time when you abandoned pieces of yourself just to be loved. The music you stopped listening to because they rolled their eyes. The hobbies you let fade because they didn't care for them. The clothes you put away because they said they preferred something else. Bit by bit, you edited yourself, convincing your heart that sacrificing what you loved was the price of belonging. Jung would call this living from a false self. It happens when we disconnect from our authentic impulses, the things that make us feel alive, in order to keep someone else close. But here's the truth. Love that asks you to erase yourself isn't love. It's control. And every time you silenced what you loved, you silenced the voice of your own soul. Now you're remembering. Healing feels like pulling those forgotten threads back into your hands. You dust off the books you used to read late at night. You play the songs that once lit up your spirit. You take yourself to the places you loved before you ever learned to shrink for someone else's comfort. And with every small step, you feel yourself coming home. Jung believed that these moments of reconnection are not trivial. They're acts of individuation. When you follow what stirs something deep in you, you reclaim the parts of the psyche that were pushed into shadow. You realize you didn't actually lose them. They were waiting quietly for you to return. And here's what's profound. As you bring these loves back into your life, you notice how natural it feels. There's no effort in it. Only relief. Relief that you don't have to pretend anymore. Relief that you can finally live in alignment with what matters to you. This is what rebuilding yourself looks like, choosing your favorite coffee without asking anyone else's opinion. Signing up for the dance class that you used to be afraid of sitting under the sky and feeling alive without needing permission to enjoy it. You realize now that love should never require you to abandon the things that make you feel most like yourself. The real you. The one who laughed freely, created boldly, dreamed wildly, She's still here. And every time you say yes to what she loves, you're telling her, I'm back. I won't leave you again. Sign 3. You no longer confuse pleasing others with being worthy. There was a time when your sense of worth hinged entirely on how well you could keep others happy. You said yes when you wanted to say no. You smiled when you were breaking inside. You twisted yourself into whatever shape they needed, hoping it would finally be enough. Jung would call this living through the persona, the mask we wear to gain approval, while hiding our true self in the shadows. But here's what you've begun to realize: worth doesn't come from pleasing others. Worth isn't something you earn. It's something you remember. Healing means understanding that you were already enough, even when no one applauded you for it. This shift is subtle, but life-changing. You notice it the first time you decline an invitation that drains you without guilt. You feel it when you speak a boundary without apologizing afterward. You see it clearly when someone is disappointed in you, and instead of scrambling to fix it, you let them hold their feelings, while you hold your truth. Jung believed that when we stop projecting our worth outward, we retrieve it from the unconscious. This is individuation, the process of reclaiming the parts of yourself that were hidden beneath constant approval seeking. The moment you stop performing, you notice something powerful: the sky doesn't fall. The people who truly value you stay, and the ones who only loved you for what you gave them quietly fade away. For so long, you confused love with compliance. You thought the more agreeable you became, the safer you'd feel. But real safety doesn't come from bending yourself out of shape. It comes from standing rooted in who you are, knowing you don't have to overgive or overprove to be deserving of love. And as you live this truth, something extraordinary happens. You breathe easier. You don't rehearse your words before speaking. You don't walk on eggshells to avoid conflict. You realize that your worth has nothing to do with how convenient you are for others, and everything to do with how fully you allow yourself to exist unapologetically as you. This is what healing sounds like in your own mind. I don't have to earn it anymore. I was already enough. And in that quiet knowing you feel it, you're finally free. Sign 4. You speak up instead of silencing yourself. There was a time when you swallowed your words. You bit your tongue, smiled politely, and told yourself it wasn't worth the conflict. Every unspoken truth became a stone you carried inside, heavy and suffocating. Jung would call this repression pushing parts of yourself into the shadow because you feared rejection more than you feared silence. But healing has changed you. Now you speak, not with anger or force, but with quiet steadiness. You no longer silence your feelings to keep the peace, because you've realized that peace built on suppression isn't peace at all, it's self-abandonment. The first time you spoke up, it felt terrifying. Your voice trembled, your heart pounded. But afterward, something profound happened. Nothing exploded. The world didn't end. In fact, you felt lighter, as if you had just returned a piece of yourself to its rightful place. This is what Jung meant by integration, bringing the rejected parts of you back into the light of consciousness. Now you notice the moments you used to let slip by: when someone talks over you, when a boundary is crossed, when your needs are dismissed. Instead of shrinking, you find your voice. You say, I don't agree. You say, that doesn't work for me. You say, I matter too. And each time it gets easier. Jung believed that individuation is not about becoming louder. It's about becoming whole. Your voice isn't just sound. It's the embodiment of yourself. Speaking up isn't about winning arguments or forcing anyone to agree. It's about showing yourself that you will no longer disappear in your own life. What's even more powerful is what happens internally. You no longer rehearse conversations endlessly in your head. You don't lie awake at night thinking of what you wish you'd said. You speak in the moment, and then you let it go. Your nervous system relaxes because it trusts you now. It knows you won't silence yourself just to avoid discomfort. And in this healing, you discover something beautiful. Your voice doesn't push love away. It calls in the kind of love that can hold it. You're no longer loved for being quiet. You're loved for being real. You've stopped vanishing in your own story. And in reclaiming your voice, you've reclaimed yourself. Sign 5, you reclaim the boundaries. You once abandoned. There was a time when your boundaries felt negotiable. You said yes when you wanted to say no. You let people take more than you had to give because the fear of losing them outweighed the discomfort of being drained. Jung would call this a betrayal of the self, a pattern born from the unconscious belief that love must be earned through sacrifice. But now you're reclaiming what you once abandoned. Healing has taught you that boundaries are not walls, they are doors. They are how you decide who is allowed in and how far they can go. They are not punishments, they are protections for your energy, your heart, and your peace. At first it felt unfamiliar. Saying I can't do that right now felt selfish. Declining invitations felt rude. You worried about being seen as cold or distant. But with every boundary you honored something inside you softened instead of hardened. You realized that holding the line didn't make you cruel, it made you safe. Jung believed that individuation requires reclaiming the parts of ourselves we gave away in pursuit of belonging. Boundaries are one of those parts. Each time you enforce them, you tell your unconscious, I am worthy of care. I am worthy of protection. And over time, your nervous system begins to trust that you won't abandon yourself to keep someone else comfortable. Now you recognize when someone oversteps, and you don't make excuses for it. You no longer explain yourself endlessly. You don't beg to be understood. Your no is complete, and it carries a quiet strength. The relationships that respect it grow deeper. The ones that don't fall away naturally, and instead of panicking, you feel relief. This is what Jung meant when he said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." Boundaries are an act of that acceptance. They say, I will not leave me even if you do. And here's the unexpected gift. The more you honor your boundaries, the more you attract those who honor them too. You no longer live in fear of being too much or too difficult. You live rooted in the truth that those who are meant to stay will stay not because you erased yourself to keep them, but because you finally stood whole. Your boundaries aren't barriers. They're bridges back to yourself and to love that sees you clearly. Sign 6. You feel like you're meeting yourself again. There was a time when you looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the person staring back. You had become who they wanted, shaped by their preferences, muted by their criticism, molded by your fear of losing them. Jung would call this living from the persona, a mask worn so long, it begins to feel like your face. But now in your healing, there's a quiet shift. It happens in moments you don't expect. The first time you laugh, and it doesn't feel forced. The first time you wear something you love without wondering if it's too much. The first time you speak a thought without rehearsing it in your head. These moments feel small, but they're sacred. Because in them, you realize I know her. I remember her. Jung believed that individuation, the journey back to wholeness, is not about becoming someone new. It's about returning to the self you left behind when you began to trade authenticity for acceptance. And when you begin to meet yourself again, it feels like reuniting with a friend you've missed for years. You notice your old curiosities resurfacing. The things that used to light you up, books you loved, dreams you shelved, little quirks you tried to hide, start to feel alive again. You remember how it felt to be yourself before you learned to edit every edge to fit someone else's comfort. And as you welcome these pieces back, something inside clicks into place. This is who you were always meant to be. It's tender, almost fragile at first. You find yourself protecting this reunion fiercely, like cradling a flame you don't want the wind to snuff out. And slowly that flame grows steadier. You no longer need to force it, it just burns. Jung wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Meeting yourself again is that privilege. It's hearing your own voice after years of silence and realizing you missed it. It's seeing your reflection and not feeling the urge to apologize or explain. It's standing there raw and unpolished and knowing you are finally home. And the beauty of it, you no longer seek permission to exist as her. You no longer dim her light to soothe someone else's discomfort. You simply live, and in living authentically, you discover a peace that was never in anyone else's hands. This is what healing feels like, a homecoming. Not to a place, not to another person, but to yourself. Sign 7. You no longer chase the love that cost you. Your identity, there was a time when you ran yourself ragged for love. You twisted into shapes that weren't yours, silenced truths that burned in your throat, and poured everything you had into proving you were enough. Jung would call this living under the power of the anima's wound, the deep unconscious belief that love must be earned by abandoning who you are. But now something in you has shifted. You've stopped chasing the kind of love that asks you to disappear to keep it. You've learned that love which costs you your identity isn't love at all. It's dependency, wrapped in longing. Jung taught that when we wake up to our shadow, we begin to see these patterns clearly, not as romance, not as devotion, but as survival strategies we no longer need. Healing feels like this. You pause before running back to someone who's half present. You breathe instead of begging for another chance. You remember who you became the last time you chased love like it was oxygen, and you decide you'll never go back there again. Instead, you anchor into yourself. You know now that true love won't demand you shrink, mute your voice, or betray the dreams that make you feel alive. You've stopped confusing intensity with intimacy, chaos with connection. You've stopped calling the ache in your chest proof that it was real. Jung believed individuation is the process of reclaiming the self from all the roles and masks you've worn for love. And as you reclaim it, you begin to see you don't have to run after what depletes you anymore. The frantic energy that once drove you has quieted, replaced with something steadier. Self-respect, groundedness, the kind of peace that doesn't rise and fall on whether someone chooses you today. Now, when faced with love that demands too much, you walk away, not in anger, but in clarity. You leave because you've learned the most profound truth of all. You cannot lose yourself and call it love. And in that space, you open to something new. Love that meets you as you are. Love that doesn't make you smaller. Love that doesn't cost you your soul. The kind of love that feels like coming home, not like running in circles. This is the moment you stop chasing, because you finally know the love you were chasing all along was the one you had to give yourself first. Carl Jung once said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." And that's exactly what this healing is. You are no longer defined by the version of yourself that disappeared just to be loved. You are becoming the woman who remembers who she was before she ever learned to perform for affection. This journey isn't about erasing your past. It's about reclaiming the parts of you that got left behind. The laughter you silenced, the dreams you shelved, the voice you softened. One by one, you are bringing them back, not as fragments, but as pieces of a whole. And here's the truth, the self you lost is never truly gone. She's been waiting patiently, quietly for you to turn inward and find her again. every boundary you set, every truth you speak, every moment you choose yourself. You step closer to her. This is individuation, the return to your essence, the reunion with the woman you were always meant to be. You're no longer building your life around being chosen. You are choosing you, and from that place, love no longer costs you your identity. It flows naturally toward the woman who is rooted steady and unapologetically whole. You don't need to run anymore. You are already home. If this spoke to you, take a moment to honor how far you've come. Leave a comment with the sign that resonated most. You might help another woman see herself in your words. Share this video with someone who's finding her way back to herself. And if you're ready to keep walking this path of Jungian healing and individuation, subscribe for more. Remember, you were never too much. You were never not enough. You are simply returning to the self you were always meant to be. And that is the most powerful thing you will ever do.